If we can overcome our addiction to the pressures of time, that something has to happen in our perception of time, and it has to happen quickly. Why? So it can end a sense of suffering and make us feel better. That's the only reason why it needs to happen fast.
Have you ever wondered what happened to the legendary Chuck Norris? I recently saw a video he made and I was shocked. He's in his 80s and still kicking butt and working out and staying active. He did this by just making one change. Chuck says he still feels like he's in his 50s. His wife even started doing this one thing too, and she's never felt better. She says she feels 10 years younger, her body looks leaner, and she has energy all day. Chuck made a special video that explains everything. Make sure you watch it by going to chuckdefense.com/inspired or by clicking on a link below this video. It'll change the way you think about your health. Once again, that's chuckdefense.com/inspired or click on a link in the description below to watch the video now. If the legendary Chuck Norris can do this at 81 years old, so can you. Watch his method by clicking on the link in the description box below, chuckdefense.com/inspired.
Friends, how's it going? It's John here. Welcome to some Coffee and Truth. How we look at things determines what kind of solutions we find, and it determines how we move forward in life. That's true for everything. And I look at these new headlines where it says, you know, they're putting masks on children in elementary schools again. I mean, just the sense of insanity and a sense of urgency. And I have been thinking very much about what is urgency? What role does it play in our decision making? And what are we so stressed by at any given time in our lives? And you have heard this before. Time is an illusion, right? You've heard this before. But it is nonetheless a reality in our reality. So to say that time and its consequences do not exist in this current reality that we're experiencing is wrong. But to say that time is real is just as wrong. So bear with me. This is a bigger thought. The reason why we run into the same patterns and why we so often don't make a true step forward and create real change in our lives is oftentimes time. When you look at your life, for most, it starts pretty much from the beginning. Everything follows a schedule. When everything follows a schedule, there is a pressure to keep that schedule. So as soon as you start going to school, you start being in charge of that schedule and keeping it, right? So you learn from an early age to keep that schedule. And don't get me wrong, it has some value. But you move through high school and then university if you go there or whatever you do, and then you go to work. And of course, then it really kicks in because then you have the work schedule. Then you have the times where you have to show up. Then, you know, you want to buy a house and most people get a mortgage. Now that creates a huge time pressure schedule. Every month on a certain day, you have to pay a certain amount for a certain amount of years. The car payments, the insurances, the forms, everything. And now I want you to imagine, just for a moment, a world where time does not exist. Which of these things would we do? All of these time-pressured things, would we do them? Would we give ourselves permission to be so boxed into these patterns? And why? Because if there's infinity to experience, a perpetual state of infinity, why would we let ourselves be pressured into something that has to happen in this moment? And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I do acknowledge the schedules. I do acknowledge the time, but I also acknowledge that we have a hard time finding the right solutions in the same realm that the problems were created in. When you really want to experience change in your life, you have to go beyond your current experience. And what does that mean? This is why we talk so often about meditation. And if you lose the word meditation, which I would encourage most people to do because it's so loaded, call it introspection, call it a journey, whatever you want to call it. But the purpose of going into a state that is not connected to the senses, which are not connected to the program, which is not connected to time, is when you transcend these senses, you are in a state that is timeless. In that timeless state, however long it lasts on your earthly clock, you have access to solutions in the future, present, and past because they're all there at the same time, because in that space there is no time. So that's why some of the greatest solutions are not created around a table where people brainstorm. What I'm talking about is tapping into a field that is not limited, because our reality has its limitations and we see those limitations, but we, at the core of who we truly are not limited. And we are not even limited by the limitations of this reality because we are not of it. Now, there's a thought, right? So then when we step into this field and give ourselves permission, because here's the thing, going into the timeless vastness of infinity is at the same time infinite potential and infinite uncertainty. Because none of the securities that we're used to in this life, the calendar, the clock, the boxes, the parameters, they're not existent there. You are a full-on creator in that space with all the power, and that can scare people. That is where solutions come from. And I believe that a big part of our problems is that we rush into a solution. First, we don't identify the problem correctly. Really identifying the problem correctly. And this is what so many people do. The pressure of feeling bad, the pressure of time, of feeling bad, sad, depressed about a certain thing in your life wants you to simply step away from it as fast as possible. All most people want to do is just avoid that pain. And I get it, trust me, I've done my fair share of bypassing. But unless you step into that, walk through it, and actually see it for what it is, you cannot walk into the space of solutions that is beyond this realm. So when we look at the world's problems today, let's go back to the masks, right? Let's go back to the vaccines. Have we done a good enough job over the last 3 years to identify the problem correctly? Have people been paying attention and done their own work? The discomfort for most people of stepping back into the mask wearing and the social distancing and just plainly being told what to do and how to behave is going to be great. But I believe the discomfort of not doing it is still greater for a lot of people. The discomfort of sticking out, the discomfort of being so opposed to what the mainstream is and not being a part of it. But when people go into the real field, and this is why I was laughing. I was laughing at the fake gurus like Sadhguru, and I know people are going to have me for it because he's a fake guru. Not that a lot of the things he said aren't very valid and true. That's the whole point of being a fake guru. You do the 80-20 thing. 80% of what you say is true. 20% of what you say is a complete lie and a distraction. And Sadhguru and Deepak Chopra, all of these people that have preached over and over and over again in books and movies and programs how you are the creator, you are the ultimate healer, and they oftentimes connect this with source, with God. And then they go, unless it's COVID, then you need a mask, social distancing, and a shot, and boosters. So when we step beyond that and are brave enough to step into the field of truth, in that field of truth, we're shown everything. That field of truth is not limited by time. And that's why people, when they truly give themselves over to that state, surrender to God, that goes beyond this reality and the next reality and the next reality, the God that is everything, you lose all sense of time because you lose your senses. You literally lose your mind in the process in the best possible way. If we were willing to do that, we would come back with a purified and clear mind. And then we could apply what we have received in that field to this reality here and actually apply these solutions. That's the kind of clarity that I'm talking about. And what is it that inventors have said over and over and over again? They tried 1,000 different ways to do a thing, but it was not until they either surrendered, gave up, gave in, or just let go, whatever they called it. And this sense of relaxation, not being so extremely focused on that particular thing that they thought was the outcome, a light bulb went off in their heads. That's what they said. Or they went into an altered state and all of a sudden it was presented to them. If any of you have ever had downloads of truth, you know what I'm talking about. These things are not thoughts that we produce in our mind. It is when we go beyond the mind that we receive that clarity. And that's why so often we can't say, this is where I learned this is where you can read about it. It just comes to you. And when it comes to you, it comes to you as a perfect body of clarity. You have no doubt about it. The next person will doubt you, but that doesn't matter because you feel it in every fiber of your being. Now, when it happens by accident, it's a beautiful serendipitous thing. But the thing that I'm saying is that you are actually capable of putting your true self in these states or connecting with your true self in these states, overcoming this mind-body perception in a space beyond time We just have to accept that it exists and that it is there at our disposal, the space of all solutions. Now imagine how hard this must be for today's leaders, even if they would be in those positions with the best of intentions. Today's leaders are trapped in an artificial information field 24/7. They usually sit in a building that is in the center of a city, which is a concrete jungle and a radiation jungle. And every few minutes, a phone rings, a text message comes through, an email comes in, an aide comes in, headline comes in, communications come in, and every few minutes, that mind, body, computer is being bombarded with information from this 3D reality. How is a leader that lives in that kind of an environment every day supposed to receive and maybe even co-create solutions that would benefit and truly help with the transformation? There are certain leaders in history that have consciously or subconsciously understood that and have removed themselves from this artificial information field, because this artificial information field goes back thousands of years. The high priests knew that's how they would manipulate their installed leaders, constantly give them information so they could never really go beyond the mind thinking, go into the spirit thinking. When leaders have a connection to nature, when they spend a lot of time in nature, they usually come to different conclusions and they usually make different decisions. They usually overcome the sense of urgency that is so often artificially produced, and they rather go into this field of infinity, and then something comes to them that is far more comprehensive. And this is available to all of us. And the more of us who start tapping into it, the more of us will come to a kind of thinking and acting and being that is truly inspiring and also provides the real solutions. We then tap into our true authenticity. What is authenticity? Authenticity is something unique. Imagine it as being your spirit's fingerprint. It only exists in the way that it expresses once. That is you. You are that authentic individual expression of that consciousness. When we tap into authenticity, we are disconnected from artificiality. What is this field? It's artificial. Everything around us. Look around you. It's artificial, right? But the more we become authentic, the more we remove our energy from this artificiality, and it eventually has to cease to exist. So, what do we need? The courage to go into absolute and perfect uncertainty that is beyond time and beyond space, and spend some time there that really isn't time. In my most beautiful and my deepest experiences, I lost all sense of time, and hence when I returned to this reality, I could not have told you whether it was 2 minutes, 20 minutes, or 2 hours. And I've experienced all of the above, where I was in the field for very long and I came back, it was only 10 minutes. And I was in the field for what seemed like just way too short, and I was gone for 2 hours. Once you make that journey more and more often, you begin pulling that field, if you will, more and more into your present awareness experience, or if you will, you remain connected to it. And that's when people say, the masters and the monks, they say, I might be sweeping the floor, but God is always here. I might be doing something mundane, but it's always in the spirit of God. For that, you have to make that trip over and over again, so it becomes nature, it becomes natural to you. So, to wrap it all up, if we can overcome our addiction to the pressures of time, that something has to happen in our perception of time, and it has to happen quickly. Why? So it can end a sense of suffering and make us feel better. That's the only reason why it needs to happen fast. If we can overcome that sense and tap into the field that truly is infinite possibility, the sense of urgency is gone immediately. Why? Because you're already in it. Whatever you desire to experience on a physical level, you then are already in it. You feel it. You feel it with every fiber of your being. You feel it in everything. And so when you return from such an experience into this present reality here, you usually take that experience, that feeling with you, and your whole body is infused with it. And in that space, you've just overcome time and the confines and the pressures of time. See, that's when I believe we're starting to become normal again, in the sense of who we truly are and what we're capable of. This time that we're in has created so much pressure and urgency. And the ironic, very ironic thing is that we need to overcome this intense amount of pressure and urgency to tap into the field where there could never be pressure and urgency in order to dissolve this pressure and urgency in this reality. Begin the journey. That's all I can say.